Hello friends, I am Anil Kumar Srivastav and I shall today discuss with the comparative land revenue rates in the different period of the history. The most important history in ancient India is now the Mauryan period. In the Mauryan period, the most uh, important tax that was levied on the land was almost equal to one sixth of the total produce of the land. So, from the very beginning, we find that these were not the companies, they were the kings, and that is why they have got the various fields or various kind of taxes they can impose. They can impose taxes on not only on land but on different type of trade, etc., custom duties and many other type of taxes were uh, imposed. So for the Mauryans, it was called the bhag or the Sita tax or the Udrang tax, and it was almost equal to one sixth of the total produce. And then we come to the next important dynasty, that is also called the classical dynasty of the Gupta period. During the Gupta period, it varies from 1/4 to 1/6 of the total produce of the land. Here we can find that the taxes which were realized by the kings were realized by the local population, by the local administration or the gram panchayats. So it was very easy to consider the different kind of things uh, with which the produce or the production process, that is the factors of production, that is the quality of produce, the quality of land, these all things were taken into account, and above all the drought and the rain, these factors, flood, the natural disasters have also been taken into account. So the people were very happy in those times, and by the rate itself suggests that the fifth, 5 and 6th portion went in their uh, uh, own use. And one thing that is very important, that it was locally collected, and another thing, the kings have various kinds of the areas where they can impose duties or taxes, and they were not dependent only on the land tax for their revenue, and there was a various variability in the revenue or that kind of the taxes. In Chola period, you find there are 400 types of the taxes, and so here the kings have taken into account the quality of the land. The whole land was uh, uh, divided into various categories according to the rate of the production or rate of the productivity. We now come to the next dynasty. We find during the Chola period, it was land tax was almost equal to 1/6 to 1/3. It varied from 1/6 to 1/3 of the total production of the land. Here we find that the Chola dynasty has a huge military, and they expanded their uh, territory even from Sri Lanka to the South Asian nations for Cambodia, Thailand, and other Southeast Asian nations. So they have maintained a huge naval army, huge military army, and that is why they uh, had they needed more tax for the maintenance of these armies. That is why the rate of tax varied from 1/6 to 1/3, one third. And then we find the Chalukya period, the rate of the land revenue was 1/6 of the total produce. It again was very less, and 5/6 portion went in the favor of the peasants or the farmers. So farmers were very happy. When we talk about the Vijayanagar Empire, the tax was almost one fourth. So it was again a happy position for the farmers. Farmer got their three-fourth of the total produce for their own self. And during the Mughal period, the it was almost one third of the produce that was the land tax given to the state governments or the central governments. So here we also find that the Mughals were also not cruel. They uh, accepted that the two-third part of the produce must go in favor of the uh, peasants or the farmers. In Sher Shah Suri period, we also find that one third was the land tax rate. And in Shivaji's period, it was almost equal to 40% or two-fifth of the land produce. It is because of the condition of the Maratha king Shivaji, who almost fought throughout the life with the Marathas, and they have to maintain army for this purpose, and that is why they needed more tax for uh, making the administration to continuous fight between the Mughals and the Marathas. And in this, all these things, we find that whether it is Maurya period or the Gupta period or the Harsh, in the Vardhan period, it was also one-sixth of the total produce. And in Delhi Sultanate, it was one-fourth during the um, uh, total Delhi Sultanate period. Alauddin Khilji paid cash, took the taxes in cash and paid cash salaries to their officers and the employees. And in the British era, there is a vast difference between the Aryan era, starting from the Mauryan period, and in the British period. Britishers were only the trading company, they were not the kings. They became the kings later on, but from 1765 onwards, 1857, we find that the permanent settlement, they have to realize 10/11th of the total tax uh, to the company, and 1/11th goes in favor of the zamindars. But the whole difference lies in that because they were the trading company, they have no other option for the revenue realization. They have only one thing, that was the diwani, or that was the only land revenue collection, and they was not kings. That is why they have no options, so they have to heavily to depend on the land tax, because they have to establish a strong army, and they have to take uh, greater share for themselves also, and that is why the burden uh, on the peasants or the farmers was excessive. And the second reason that we have to see that they cannot divide the land. They cannot divide the land into different categories. In the RN period, we find always the, as usual, the some land is more fertile, some land is less fertile, and on the basis of the fertility, the land has been uh, categorized, and on the basis of the categorization, the produce was depending on that. The dependence of the produce was on the fertility of the land, and so the category of the land was also very important. But when we see the East India Company has no option, because they did never knew the quality of the land, and they did not even measure the land. So and they were not the kings. So the first important thing, that this was a trading company, British East India Company, and RN were the kings. And the other option was that the RNs have categorized the different kinds of lands on the basis of the fertility. And here the basic motive behind the trading company was that to realize more and more funds. And they have neither measured the land, neither nor they divided lands on the basis of the category, so that the land can be uh, divided into categories, and on the basis of the category, the different kind of produce will be there, and so the different kind of taxes will be imposed based on the category. So this is lacking on in the East India Company regime. And secondly, they also followed the theory of David Ricardo, that over and above the cost, what is produced belongs to the state. That is, the above the cost, everything was counted as rent. And almost in every regime, whether the permanent settlement regime, or there was a Raiyatwadi regime, or it was a Mahalwadi regime, their object was that they can go up to all the produce over and above the cost. That is, the farmer was left without any kind of produce. He was left only with the cost of production. So this was the target. Although it was given, the tax rate was given, in the Zamindari system we find that the 10/11th was bent in favor of the government, but the Zamindars have collected more revenue for themselves, and that is why it reached almost what it was called the rent. So the farmers were left only with the cost of production. And in Raiyatwadi system, though it was found that it varied from 50% to 60% depending upon the dry land and the irrigated land. But it was some kind of human element that has been put into it in the Raiyatwadi system, because the Raiyat or the peasants were the owners of the land. And in the third, the Mahalwadi system, we find that 66% was the rate of tax, and this 66% was on the paper, but it almost reached to the total amount, that is called rent. That is, in all these systems we find that the peasants were left only 5% to 10% more than the cost. They were left only with the input, and that is why they have to pay strictly and depended on the money lenders, and they uh, uh, were in uh, attracted towards the vicious circle of indebtedness and vicious circle of poverty. So now we can see and we can conclude that the RN system has got one thing, that the RNs were the kings, and that is why they have got the different resources, different kind of taxes for the revenue. But here the company got no resource except to the land tax. And secondly, the all the RNs were divided and measured the land into on the grounds of the fertility, and they were categorized on the basis of the fertility, and the land was, the tax was imposed on the basis of the fertility, and the people who collected the tax belonged to their own area, that is the local administration, that is the gram panchayat, and this local administration was collecting. So they have been very human. They had to see that there is a no rain, that is there is a drought, there is a flood, and there is other kind of natural disasters which are faced by the farmers, and that is why they can uh, alter it according to the conditions prevailing there. But here we find that the sunset theory was applied, and that is why there was nothing in favor of the tillers of the land or the peasants. So that made the whole revenue system of the British era very oppressive on the on behalf of the farmers, and it was a necessity for the uh, English people and the trading company, East India Company. So that's all today, and we come to the end of the comparison of the different revenue systems during the different era. Thank you very much.